let's take a look at long distance relationships. There's a lot of angles to look at here with long distance relationships, but I'm going to play off a specific angle based off of a viewer's question that was sent to me recently. And the summary of the question is basically, hey JP, I'm a guy, and I'm in love with this lady. And we live in different countries overseas, so we see each other very rarely, and we want to move together, but the immigration kind of stuff is taking longer than we want it to. And the tension recently with all of that has made us fight online when we do get a chance to talk. What the heck should I do? So, I've been in my fair share of long distance relationships. Been around the block a few times, as they say. And the relationship I'm in now with my lovely girlfriend Deanna is the result of a long distance relationship. We started off long distance, and I moved from San Diego to Charleston to be with my lovely lady. So that's my way of saying I've been in long distance relationships that have ended in a crash, if you will. And I'm in the result of a long distance relationship that's ended in loveliness. So through my experiences, my pain, and my pleasure, I'll share with you some of my perspectives based on just my delusional perspectives, nothing more. First thing I take a look at is realistically, some relationships are compatible based only on the conditions of being long distance. It can be actually pretty easy to be in love with someone who we don't actually get a chance to know. A long distance relationship, when it's in the long distance phase, whether that's a short period of time, long period of time, in my opinion, we are limited in the potential of intimacy and the potential depth of a relationship that we can experience. So for me, a long distance relationship is a holding pattern. It limits us. Now, some people would say, JP, it's a personal choice. Maybe a long distance relationship forever is right for me. It's a personal choice. Yeah, I get that. I don't know why you're so angry. But it's my opinion that that personal choice, the perpetuation of the long distance relationship, does limit you. You don't get to go deeper into the relationship. So there comes a time in any long distance relationship where we're in a position to take a risk or not take a risk. And I think the risk, and this viewer, it sounds like he's actually already wanting to take that risk, but the immigration stuff is just delaying it. But I want to say this anyway. I feel important about myself. When it's time to take the risk of one of us moves, or we move to a third location, and we take that next step where we're together often instead of every once in a while, that's a risk. Because I don't care who you are, I don't care how delusionally infatuated you are, and I don't care how in love you are. You don't know that the relationship is gonna work until you close the gap. And that's scary. A lot of us can actually create a lot of maybe even unconscious reasons why to delay moving together, because we know that is a risk inherently. We know what we want, we know what we think, we know what we feel, we know how infatuated we are, we know the stories that we tell ourselves, but we don't know if the relationship is gonna work or not. So that's a risk. And my experience is it's a scary risk. It really is. I can stay in this, semi-intimate relationship with distance forever and be comfortable, but I'll be limited. There's not the full rapture of the beloved other's heart and my heart that I'll be able to experience when we're at such a distance or only see each other rarely. One definition of a good intimate relationship is when you're with someone who annoys the living heck out of you. That's not all they do. But if your partner doesn't annoy the crap out of you at least once in a while, then you're not close enough to be triggered. And I think we need to be triggered in relationships. I don't like it, but I think we need it in order to learn and grow and find our unresolved stuff. When we get triggered, annoyed, angry, that's our unresolved stuff coming to the surface. I don't think it's about the other person. I think it's about us. That's another time, another story, another video. We'll talk about that later. My experiences, I've been in some of my long distance relationships that have, we'll call it, failed. I've even had a hunch like, I think this is going to fail. I think it's going to be painful. I'm going to jump off a cliff and I think I'm going to land in rocks. But I'm going to do it anyway because that's something I need to experience. So maybe just to justify my own dysfunction, or maybe there's some validity to it, I don't know. Yet what I will say to you is you don't need a guarantee the relationship will work out. It's okay for you to take a risk if that's what you choose to do. It's even okay if it fails. It's even okay for you to test drive it. Take your risk, even though part of you might actually think it's going to fail. If that's what you choose, that's absolutely okay for you to experience. I wouldn't trade my experiences of kind of thinking this is going to fail. I wouldn't trade those. I had great experiences. They were painful. It's something like I land at the bottom of the cliff. I'm like, I'm not doing that again. Or I'm not doing that any more than 3 or 4 more times, maybe 5 at the most. So, with that said, this lovely viewer also mentions, in the time that we do have online together, we've been fighting because of the distance. We've been fighting because we haven't had enough time together. And I would guess that love isn't, that your love for her or love for you, that's not what's motivating the fighting. Maybe you do have love. I mean, that's for you to know. And let's just say you do. I don't think love is what motivates the fighting, the anger, the resentment. I would guess it's just pure attachment that creates the tension. And actually, specifically out of that attachment, what I'd ask you to take a look at is the expectations you have of her and the expectations you have of you that are unrealistic. So if I were in your position where I have a beloved on the other side of the ocean, I just hit my aloe plant, that I don't get to see often, I would personally have a very unrealistic expectation that I wouldn't look at often, that I might not even know is there because it's completely illogical. That unrealistic expectation of mine would be, I want you to be there for me all the time. Logically, we look at that, well, she's across the ocean, she can't be there for you all the time. But part of me will get angry that she's not able to meet that expectation that part of me has, that want, that desire that comes out through the form of an expectation. So part of me will have probably misdirected anger where I think I'm upset about something, there's tension. I think I would need to take a look at, part of me has some unrealistic expectations here, and it's okay. I just want to see them so that they don't control me. And I would also have the unrealistic expectation of myself that I should be able to be there for my partner when she's on the other side of the ocean whenever she needs me. Reality says that's not possible. Yet my expectations are not based on my reality. They're based on my emotional attachment. So I would have that very impossible, unrealistic expectation of myself. And I don't know about you. Yet when I'm essentially in a committed relationship with an expectation, and I can't meet that expectation, I fail at the mission of meeting the expectation, that angers part of me. It annoys me. Deep down inside, I think part of me feels like a failure, feels shame that I'm not able to be what I think she wants me to be, feels shame that I'm not able to make her into what I want her to be and to get her to be there for me as much as I need and want her to be. So instead of showing up in the relationship on the next phone call and say, yeah, part of me feels like a failure that I can't be there for you more often. Like, I understand there's a distance and I can't, yet nonetheless, part of me feels like a failure. I would have a tough time doing that. I think it'd be good to do, yet I'm guessing that that anger, that shame would come out more misdirected, where I'll project all that onto a tone of voice she has, and I'll get upset about that as a place to dump the anger, the tension, the shame, the fear. I'll dump all that in a place that makes sense to my conscious mind. Yeah, it makes sense that I should be upset about her tone because she's acting like she doesn't even want to see me. Because my mind would judge, well, it doesn't even make sense that I would be upset that she's not there for me when I come home at night because I know she lives in a different country. So that tension gets misdirected into something that I'm not actually upset about. And that can lead to a lot of fight because no matter how much the fight is discussed, the conflict is discussed, it seems to go nowhere because we're discussing a conflict that isn't the real conflict. It's just a circular road that leads nowhere other than more conflict. So, long story short, I mean, that's me projecting myself onto you. But when you're the one in the long distance relationship feeling tension, I would ask you to consider taking a look at your unrealistic expectations of her and you, your partner and you, so that you can speak and communicate closer to the core of what you're really upset about, so that unnecessary tension isn't there. The tension that's there, that's necessary, you get to address that, rather than needing to create a lot of unnecessary tension. That's another longer story, long about the long story, to say, I would guess you're very emotionally attached. And that's okay. It's just something to take a look at and to not fool yourself about. I'm not upset because I'm so much in love with her. No, my love for her is kind of like a source of peace. But it's my emotional attachment and expectations that aren't being met. I think life should be functioning differently. You know, my expectations are the timeline should be quicker on, when we get to move together. So when life doesn't meet our expectations, we don't meet our expectations, our partner doesn't meet our expectations, we can be upset. Even though it's pretty ridiculous, it's still our upset. It's ours, it's real, and we can talk about that. Last thing I will say about long-distance relationships in this moment is the Romeo and Juliet syndrome can be easily functioning. I mentioned infatuation earlier. We don't really get to know someone until we're living with them for at least 6 months to a year, if not 2 years. When I've been in your position, which I have many times, I swear to God, I know this person. I swear to God, I know who she is. I swear to God, I am really in love, and I swear to God, this relationship is meant to be. I've known that for sure, even though it's proved to be false many times. Because being a human being, you're susceptible to the human condition that I call the Romeo and Juliet syndrome, which I've got a whole video about. I'll link in the description below. I think it's a good video. I'm maybe a little biased because it's my damn video, but I'm going to link it anyway. Check that out if you want. So for me, there's a token of humbleness that's helpful for long distance relationships, where the humbleness is one that says, based on the relationship now, I'm enjoying it and I'm interested in taking the next step. And I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know how that'll turn out. I know how I want it to turn out. I know how I think it'll turn out. But humbleness says, there's the next step, and I don't know how it'll turn out for sure. Arrogance, emotional attachment, same thing, says, I love this relationship, and this is how the relationship will always be. And taking the next step, here's what that'll be. It'll be a complete success. It's a story we tell ourselves. It's a very poetic story, very Romeo Juliet-like story. But it is a story in and of itself. The reason why I ask you to call a story instead of convincing yourself it's a reality is because I've betrayed myself many times. I've authored a story, I've told myself that story, I've read this story, and then I've believed this story. And then I feel humiliated and pissed off at myself that I believed that story after the relationship turned out to be something different than what the story told me it would be. So it's taken me, a lot of times of skinning my knees, if you will, of being betrayed by my own stories that I buy into hook, line, and sinker to accumulate enough pain to say, yeah, I'd invite you to not betray yourself as much as I have. Or if you need to betray yourself, if you need to have a story about what the relationship will be, and you need to just believe that story and believe that it's not a story, believe it's a reality, then go for it. It'll be a lesson for you. Hopefully a pleasant lesson, maybe a painful lesson. Lastly, I know I'm rambling here. I say ramble a lot recently. I don't know why I do that. I'm in a long-distance relationship with myself. I'll talk to myself about that. Yeah, because there's so much with long-distance relationships, I know I'm getting a little long-winded. The last thing I will say, this is based purely on my experience, and it's something I'd really invite you to consider. A long-distance relationship and closing the gap, or choosing not to, it's a freaking adventure. Go for it. Whatever go for it means, whether you dive in further or you get into a long-distance relationship and then leave it. A long-distance relationship, it's an adventure. There's a lot of life experience from my perspective that happens with a long-distance relationship. It's got its challenges, and those challenges, I think, refine and shape the gem of our own self. And they pressurize the gem of our own self. So even though it can be tough as hell at times, mysterious at times, hopeless at times, delusionally infatuated at times, sometimes a little reality too, it's a great adventure nonetheless. I appreciate you guys paying attention to my musings about long-distance relationships. And dear lovely viewer down on the underside of the world, I appreciate your question, and I appreciate you paying attention to a little bit of this food for thought. I'll be wishing you well. And for all you lovely people who have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I'd invite you to close the distance in the relationship that you have with the subscribe button on my channel. And I'll talk to you next time.